Yeah, so we only have 2 screens today. Today we're going to talk about burnout, which is very real in ABA. I think anybody who has worked in the field for longer than a year can absolutely attest to burnout. So let's just get into it.
So we want to kind of talk about what some common signs and symptoms of burnout in ABA are. So for me specifically, I just start to not really want to get up and get ready for work, kind of want to sleep all the time instead. I don't think I've gotten frustrated with clients, but it's a typical
I've definitely gotten frustrated. Not in any aggressive way or anything, but like you get frustrated. You don't want to you should be reinforcing them for something really little, and you don't even think to reinforce them because you're just like, great, you finally did it. Like, let's move on now.
You're thinking with your emotions. Yeah.
Right, instead of what the behavior plan says. And I think, yeah, like I guess like sometimes I'll get triggered and then I'll just kind of like take a deep breath and like have to take a step back. But another thing that I think I feel super strong, even without burnout, is like feeling like you're not good at your job, right? Like I think, but burnout is like, that's also like a symptom of burnout, is like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that's something that comes across for a couple people that I've talked to in the field in general. It's like that imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
And
especially when you're new, like when we passed our test, we're like, do we know what we're doing?
Who let us become BCBAs? I mean, like you pass a test and then it's like, here you go. And I feel like they want you to be prepared enough, like with the tools, right? We're given so many tools over time that they expect you to just be ready and like just thrown right in. And at least for me, like I was thrown right in. I didn't have the assistant job like you did. And so I think for me, that is really difficult sometimes to like think back of like, I didn't have that experience where I was like working on these things before I became a BCBA, where I was just literally thrown right in. So there's some days where I'm like, oh my gosh, do I even know what I'm talking about? So
I didn't even consider that. Like, yeah, I guess that was beneficial to have that role, although it wasn't my favorite role.
I mean, but like you got some sort of experience, not saying like,
oh yeah.
I just think that it helped. I don't know if from an outsider view, I feel like it might have helped you. Whereas like maybe it would have helped me too, but I don't know. I don't know your experience of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we have time to talk about that really quickly. I guess, and this kind of does go hand in hand with burnout, because at one point I was just an assistant and not in an RBT role, and I couldn't meet my hours, and we'll talk more about meeting those billables, and that was really stressful. I felt like I was working so much and not billing and still not meeting my hours. So I had to be an assistant and an RBT to meet that criteria.
Which definitely is going to get you burnt out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, G, like, do you feel like any of those are things that you see as an RBT?
Yeah, I think all of it. I mean, I honestly think that RBTs get a little bit more burnout like on the day-to-day, because we're dealing with the clients like firsthand. I mean, especially I guess with the company, like we all work together. Like my current company was a little bit different of how like we ran things, but like you're seeing the same client every single day for X amount of hours, and it's like I'm over this program, I'm over running the same program. It's the same thing day in and day out, and especially when your kiddo's not making progress the way that you want them to, it's just like, what am I doing? What's going on? Like, this is so taxing and not cool. So,
well, and it's like, if you're feeling that way, I wonder how, if you're getting burnt out by the repetitiveness, I wonder if, the client's perspective is the same too. Because if you're with the client for so long, it's like you both, you can kind of feel like, okay, this is not working. We are getting on each other's nerves.
That's where I kind of like my current company, would like there's multiple texts on the case, and so it was a lot more, generalization of the skills, and I just think it was a little bit more collaborative of like, hey, this isn't working for me. Is it working for you? Is it like a person thing, or is it like, hey, it's not working for the whole team? Like maybe we need to like reevaluate. Like we're not making progress on this goal. Maybe we gotta kind of trash it and backtrack or trash it and move somewhere else in the program. Like where should we go with this?
Yeah.
Type of energy.
Okay, so we kind of talked about like how it affects us each individually. So what are good strategies to prevent the burnout that is all over ABA? It's a big thing in the field.
I mean, for me, I know like just like even if the client could hand me a peck today or like, made like the smallest bit of progress, even if it wasn't like mastering a goal, like even just being able to do part of the goal, like really just like focusing on those little itty bitty like progress marks of like, you know what, we got further today than we did yesterday. So like today was a good day. And like, yeah, really just focusing on that aspect of it.
I know G and I were talking a lot about this earlier. Just developing a routine and, making sure that you are taking your breaks and taking care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you're not able to take care of yourself and your needs, your client's needs are going to get, put on the back burner, and that's not fair to them. We're there to help the client at the end of the day. So I think that's also something else that's super important, like tuning into your own feelings and trying to see what you need, right?
Yeah, developing routine. Yeah, I mean, if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you support someone else?
Right, exactly. And that's something that I have to like also keep in mind too when I'm talking to my technicians about breaks or, calling out. Like it's okay to call out if you really need that break.
All right, everyone. Mom ears are burning.
So we were just saying, I think that I had a technician that actually had to call out one day because they were not feeling the best to provide the best quality care, right? Like that's also something else to keep in mind is like if you can't.
I think it's important to like note, like I feel like a lot of people feel like, hey, I can't take that time off, but like I've always been a person that, like if you can't provide the best care for the kiddos, then like do call out because you're not doing anything by being there.
Yeah, what good are you
Honestly,
doing?
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like doing more damage than good at that point. And then like not saying that you're damaging someone for going in because you're feeling burnt out, but like it's just more you're not making good choices for yourself.
Like I bet that you won't see progress that day.
Right. You're gonna see.
Well, I was gonna kind of bring up what if the RBTs don't have, like if they're part-time, what if they don't have PTO or sick time to use?
Right.
That can make them feel, like.
Well, I
You have
think
to
that
go.
kind of dives into our next question of like how the job itself like can help with burnout. I feel like a lot of organizations don't, I don't want to say don't care, but there isn't like effective strategies in place to be like,
Yeah, there seems to be a trend of.
Like they say take breaks, take breaks, take breaks, but like
my money's on the line.
I also am terrible and I don't like taking breaks. Like I flew up yesterday to come here and I hated not working. Like because I'm like, oh my gosh, like what about my clients? I'm texting my clients' families. I am checking in. I am, doing all those things while in the airport still. And yet I'm supposed to be off. Like I physically cannot remove myself. I don't know how.
I think like we're in such a field that like organizations do need to like, even if you're part-time, like giving 2 sick days a year or being able to accrue those like, even if you call them mental health days, like again, this is such a field of a high burnout that we need it. Like again, but a lot of to your point, like I do think that a lot of people don't take the time off. It's because like now my pay's in jeopardy. I can't pay my bills. Now this is a whole spiral that I can't provide for myself, and like that's even now worse for your mental health because you're stressing about paying your bills and everything.
Yep.
I also think that organizations, you guys can tell me if you're right or wrong. I've been in organizations that they throw pizza parties at you. Oh,
Oh yeah, like instead of giving you a raise, let's do this instead. And it's like, but that's not helping my livelihood.
I know every month it was like, oh, we have a mandatory staff meeting that's after hours that you have to come to, but we're gonna provide you pizza. I don't care.
You know, they're trying to provide reinforcement, but it's like, is that motivating for everybody?
The best. So one incentive that my company did have was if you worked if you worked 2 Saturdays within a month, which were always optional, if you worked 2 Saturdays in a month, you would get a PTO day. That was the most I think I saw people like signing up for Saturdays because it was like, no, like, yeah, I want that extra PTO day. Like that's worth me working extra.
That was an effective, that was an effective, oh my God, I'm stuck. That was an effective reinforcement system, it sounds like.
Exactly. So I think like organizations don't have enough in place to help with.
Well, and it's weird because we work in ABA, we work in mental health, we should know the importance of mental health, and we know reinforcement systems. So why can't we get this right?
I think
why can't we figure that out?
Yeah, and like I remember I feel like there was a meeting that we had and like at our old company, and they were like, what can we do to retain people and to help with like, you know, ensuring that people feel secure or like come to work more or anything along those lines, right? How can we entice people? And I think one of the things was like a raffle, like to provide like gift cards, right? Wasn't that one of them?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I don't know if that was only geared toward RBTs, because I feel like in general there is a higher turnover rate for RBTs than BCBAs, which is unfortunate because so much of the work is RBT. Like we need RBTs. We rely heavily on them to, you know, to run these programs and to report back to us and collaborate with us, and you know, all these things are a huge role. And I don't know, we need to figure out a system to make them feel more wanted and valued. Yeah, I think it was like, I can't remember the incentive, but I think it also has a lot to do with RBT availability and the client's availability. And
which I think we dive into a little bit like later on too, like just like if BCBAs don't have an RBT, like how much that affects a lot of things. It affects the client,
affects everybody.
Yeah, it affects everyone.
Yeah, and then I was also gonna say, like, you know, sometimes it's important to remember that we have to be understanding of, like, especially if someone is saying they're feeling overwhelmed or, you know, if they need additional support, just remembering that they are human.
No, but to your point, like I think as an RBT at least, like I think when the BCBA comes up, it comes out to like supervise you or whatever, it's really helpful when it's like, hey, can we like, I'm having a really rough day, can we like split the session? Like I get it, like you're out here to observe, but like can I run a goal and then can you just run it so I can kind of sit back and watch? I'm still a part of the session, but like I'm not doing all of the work that needs to get done.
I love that. Yeah,
like,
and that should be happening anyway, because especially if you're like, I'm not sure if I'm running this goal right.
Absolutely. And I do think a lot of the time when the BCBA comes out, that is what it is, but you know, just being vocal about that. Like I am having a rough day. This is, you know, I'm really getting overwhelmed with everything. Like, can we please like work together this session? Because I need it.
And I try to create that relationship with my technicians too, so they can be open and honest about that type of stuff. Because if there is an opportunity to do something like that, granted, my toxic trait is taking over the entire session. And I've learned, you know, I have to back up a little bit, but, you know, I think that I've developed a good enough relationship with my technicians for like, if someone does need me to do something like that, or if they're struggling with a goal or, you know, whatever it may be, I appreciate that back and forth. So I guess like my next thing that I want to bring up is, what role does self-care play in combating burnout for us?
Well, this is one thing that I don't I try to bank all my PTO.
I think
And it
like
backfires.
I think a lot of people do that. Like I worked a lot on like convincing myself that it was okay to take PTO days. The PTO is there for a reason, and it's something that my current company, like I shouldn't even admit this, but we were allowed to go into the negatives in our PTO, like to a certain extent, which I did kind of like that they did because it's like, hey, if I still need to do all of these things. Like this last year I was pregnant and I had a bunch of doctor's appointments, and unfortunately a lot of my PTO went to doctor's appointments because I had my doctor was almost an hour away, and it wasn't something that like I could just pop over and pop back to work. I had to take like the afternoon, and I had to really think about it, but I wasn't really able to take a vacation or able to take like actual days off to do something that I wanted to do because I was using all of those days for PTO or for my appointments or whatever. And I don't know. I really do think like I get what you're saying. A lot of people I feel like bank it, but I think you just need to use it when you can. Yeah, like now she's on vacation. She's trying to do shit.
Well, not really, but it's fine. But no, so the one thing that I do love about my company is that I can flex my time. So as long as I'm averaging my hours, and like that's the great thing about like, when you do have companies like that where you can average
Yeah.
like, okay, I have X amount of hours per week of billables that I need to meet
I think
for
that's
my
like a
job.
little easier for BCBAs.
Yeah, I don't think it's offered to RBTs, but for BCBAs, it is like a benefit, I will say. And so for me, I am trying to bank it so that I use it for like if I really, really need it. Like I just try to, I'm also terrible with actually using PTO. So, like G said, I'm here and I just don't know how to just press the button that says PTO.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't, I tried not to use my PTO, but I would also not meet my billables if I wouldn't use it. And it's like, well, like that, I think that's also a problem too. Like if I have to use my PTO to meet my billable hours,
You're still working, you're hustling your entire week, and then you have to add
Yeah.
the PTO on top of that. And it's like, well, I didn't even actually use time off.
exactly. Yeah, it didn't feel like I took any time off, and I still would have to use it just to meet the billables, which is a whole other issue,
Right.
I think. Are there any specific challenges or stressors unique to ABA that contribute to burnout?
I think for me, it's like really hard to hear when like you go out to the parent or whatever, especially like I worked in a clinic setting the most recently, and like you go to like, hey, the client had a great day, like he used his textbook or his AEC device and was, really good at communicating today. And the parents like not happy with that because they want them to communicate verbally. And I'm like, but they are communicating, like they just told me that they needed this, and the parents like not as excited as I am that they're actually like they're using what we're teaching them, and you're
Yeah.
still not happy with it.
By the way, PECS stands for Picture Exchange Communication System, and AAC stands for augmentative, right? Isn't it augmentative or
Augmentative
alternative communication? Something along those lines. It's an iPad, it's a talker, you press the buttons, it's lovely, it's amazing, actually. It's the best communication device out there, in my personal opinion. Anyways, just wanted to make sure our people knew what those were because
yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think like sometimes people expect progress to happen a lot faster than it is. And I personally believe that sometimes parents are misconstrued, right? I think that sometimes providers are misconstrued and how fast our progress can actually be made. And ideally, it'd be lovely. It would be the best thing in the world if this happened overnight, but Rome wasn't built in a day. So neither is progress in ABA.
And I also think it's was they like parents will share stories of other parents, and it's like, oh well, my kid ABA really worked for my kid. We were able to make progress, within a couple months, and it worked really well. And like other kiddos, it does work well for. It just takes them longer, especially like when you're first starting an ABA and you need to build those foundational skills, like sometimes it does take a while for some kiddos.
Yep. Especially when
Well,
you
and I
don't have
think-
any request skills. Like that's what you start with first is
Yeah.
the requesting.
Yeah. And I think it's just important in general to know that, you know, ABA is individualized. Every kid is different. Every kid or adult, even, like, they learn at their own pace, and they're going to make progress in their own timeline. Like, they will do it when it's best for them, you know? So like that might not look like our progress expectations or like the parent or caregiver expectations. So yeah, like if they're not progressing as fast as parents want them to, or even we want them to, like we need to take a step back and think like, okay, but that's okay, or like maybe we need to change something, or just knowing that it's really up to the client if they want to make progress or not.
Yeah. Well, you two, with your not PTO taking, how do you establish healthy boundaries then with clients to then prevent burnout?
I don't know, Erica, how do you texting them at the airport?
Listen, okay. So I tell all my families this. I use a Google Voice number. I use a Google Voice to keep it separate from all of my personal text messages.
Or
So
just any type of separate number.
yeah,
It doesn't even have to be.
it doesn't have to be a Google Voice, but I personally feel like it can sit there as a notification on my Google Voice app. But like, if it
How's
gets
that work for you?
filtered, it's working well.
Does it? Okay.
I only texted once, and that was yesterday at lunch because there was an issue, and that was it. Daylight savings is messing with everything and scheduling and
Oh.
yeah. So yeah, I try to stay within that boundary of working hours, and I use that Google Voice number. And if I have to, I'm emailing instead of texting, especially if it's like after hours. I am making sure that I'm emailing instead of sending a text message. Now, granted, last Sunday, was trying to get some stuff together, and I ended up having a text conversation with a brand new RBT at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, because I was having anxiety. I needed to start them the next day.
No, you need to set healthy work hours.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that, I guess. I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress.
I feel like that's like a hard thing to do in ABA.
It is hard, and it's hard especially if you have the flexibility to work at home. So like when I was part telehealth, you know, I would work sometimes till 7, 8 p.m., which to me is unacceptable. It just is for me. That doesn't work for me. Might work for some other people, but now like I do have a work laptop, and I bring it home every day, but it's off. I leave it in my bag. I only bring it home in case one of the kids are sick, and I can request, like if Nick can't stay home with them, because it's been like a weekly thing now where someone's sick. So like that flexibility is nice, but I do not turn my laptop on. And I think it's easier because it's a school position. So there's that hard boundary already built in.
You're only
Yeah, it's
working when
already
there's
built in.
school. Whereas like,
Well, not technically, because we still work, like my hours are until 4, and school around here lets out at 2:30 and 3.
like essentially you're
So-
still working like school days, whereas like
Yeah.
in ABA, like, or I guess it would be home.
Oh yeah, there's no Saturday, like no
clinic.
Saturday
Yeah, there's no social
sessions,
skills on
no.
Saturdays or like
No.
any, yeah. So like that's a
Yeah.
little bit, I guess, easier, right? But also at the same time, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like when I was working remotely, like I couldn't step away. Like
No, you can't. There's no like clock in and clock out time. Like, so it's hard. And I only have like I only gave my personal number to a couple staff so far. No parents have my personal number because I'm supposed to have a work number. That's just an IT issue.
but it also
But I
helps
have
to keep in
considered
that
getting Google
boundary.
Voice. Yeah, but also, and I don't know if they would reach out to me over the weekends. It's also like being in a school already sets a boundary between me and parents.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's definitely different, like in that way, and it's more of a physical boundary, I feel. But I mean, yeah, if I get the urge to like get on my laptop, I'm like, no. Like it's been a lot easier to just leave it in my bag and wait until Monday morning to open it up. Are there any systemic issues within the field of ABA that contribute to burnout, and how can we address this or try to change it?
I think a big one, at least before I left for maternity leave, that was a big thing, was like the push for hours. I know like obviously each kid is prescribed a certain amount of hours, and I know that, we try our absolute best to meet them. However, we are, I guess, just like anyone else, like it's a field that is very understaffed right now. There's not enough techs, there's not enough ECBAs, there's not enough of us. And so meeting those hours becomes extremely difficult to meet. And I think like the push for it like then turns us into like they don't care about our basic needs. They don't care about our being humans. Like, no, you need to be here. For example, like something that had happened more recently, I had a friend who's a technician whose car broke down, and it wasn't like, hey, are you okay? Is there anything we can help with? It was like, well, how are you getting to work? And it's like, I'm not getting to work. Like, I have to deal with this because A, we use our cars to drive from client to client, and it is a big necessity of the job. And two, like, I have other stuff that I need to do with my car after work, and I need a car to function right now. So my personal experience has been like, it comes from the higher ups, it comes from like administration and like all the way down, and administration kind of forgets, either they've never been a tech or they forget what it is like to be a tech, and it just kind of gets fizzled down to like, no, do your job. And it's like, we're still human. There's stuff going on.
And I will say, I think that it also has to do with, I don't know, I feel like it goes company to company, right? Like it all depends on like
Absolutely.
what facility you're at. Because personally, when I got into my car accident, like everyone was like, okay, whatever you got to do, like don't worry about it. And I don't think it's just because I'm a BCBA. I think that if it was whoever it was in that situation, it would have been cancel the rest. Let me call and cancel the rest of your day, which my clinical director amazingly did for me. And then, I figured out the rest of it because I was nowhere near home. But that's besides the point. Like, trying to figure out that type of stuff in a high anxiety state, right? Like your car breaks down. Of course you're high anxiety. You're not going to be able to go to work with a positive attitude anyway. It's like I would not have been able to function normally the rest of the day if I had went to work right after being in a car accident, And I think that, like I said, I think it goes from place to place depending on like
sure.
also who you're talking to too. Which is unfortunate because you would think, we're all human. We all like we're providing a service to like kids that need our help. And if we're not able to help ourselves, I think I said that in the very beginning, if we're not able to help ourselves, we can't help them.
Yeah.
That has similarly happened here, but it was more like G's example of like if you're without a car, you have someone else drive you, or you get an Uber, which is like, but in my head, I'm like, wouldn't that put the client at risk? Because now more people are knowing where they're like, if it's a home setting, what that like that in my head didn't make sense when a situation like that happened here. Exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't know, there's something happened. I feel like I was like, if I had to get my car inspected or whatever, it was a whole day thing. So like Nick and I have two cars, and in PA, if my car had to go in, I would like, if he didn't have to go anywhere, like when he worked third shift, I could take his car. But sometimes that wasn't the case, so I couldn't go anywhere. And it was never expected to like for him to drive me to work. And I wouldn't have allowed that anyway, because he's not supposed to know where my clients live.
Exactly. Exactly. Like Scott and I are down to one car right now. And I mean, he works remotely, so like it works out that I can just drive myself. I would never in a million years ask him to drive me to work because I don't want that. Like I don't think he needs to
Yeah.
know any of that stuff.
No.
Um,
Like,
but
if anything, I'm just like, hey, I'm going to be like, if I can anticipate a problem, like, I'm going to be in this vicinity, or like, I would tell like the town I'm going to, like, I'm going to
Mhm.
this town today.
Or like a landmark, like near like that
Yeah.
McDonald's.
you know, just that
Yeah.
tree over there, G. She was telling me earlier, she tells
Don't
me,
go in, get go in.
I'm getting into it. She tells Peter directions and tells him, oh yeah, turn at that tree or that, you know,
That was
silly landmark.
That's what I do. I'm like, oh, near like near Big Lots. Okay, cool.
Mine are Dunkin' Donuts. Oh, you know where that Dunkin' Donuts is? Yeah, I'm in that area. But anyways, we are gonna start wrapping up in a second, but I just want to go around the room, and even though G and I are in the same room, I guess around the Zoom, and ask 2 ways that you will prevent burnout going forward to help yourself cope.
Take PTO.
Oh my gosh, why
there
did you do the balloons again? Jesus.
No, take your PTO. Like if you can't get up in the morning, you can't do your job, like take the PTO. That's why it's there. And I just have always like just communicate with your people. Like tell them what's going on. There's no reason to beat around the bush. Like I am burnout. Go and tell them. Like let your coworkers help you, because I guarantee you everyone has been in this position, and everyone knows what it feels like.
Oh, I guess it's my turn. Whew, wow. People stare. I guess it's because the balloons were flying in here and she wasn't expecting it. So 2 ways that I am going to prevent burnout going forward is, I mean, I communicate really well with people, so I guess that's not really a change that I'd be making, but I over communicate with my supervisor when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out. But then I know you guys have heard previously that I work out a lot. So I'm gonna just continue to make sure that I am taking that time for myself, even if it's like 10 minutes or whatever, take a walk or one of those things, just to clear my head for a hot minute and then get back to work if I can.
And go.
Um,
I know we're putting you on the spot. This was not prepared. Sorry, not sorry.
I mean, one way that I prevented burnout for myself was to make sure I have steady hours, and now those hours are guaranteed, because if like an IEP meeting is canceled, I can still get paid and I'm not stressed about meeting my billables. So get you a company that pays you even when things are canceled, which
Yeah.
is not
So
existent. So that's a problem.
That's a big thing. That is a big thing. All right.
You didn't give 2 examples of how you're going to prevent burnout for yourself, and that was the purpose. Remember the balloons? There was 2.
Communication, maybe planning. I never, like, this is a problem. I don't plan like trips ahead. We haven't taken a legit family vacation, and that is like something I want to work on. Is okay, we're gonna take this time and, you know, put up my email away message. You cannot reach me.
I love that. Perfect.
Limit my availability.
Snaps for everyone.
Well done. All right, well, just to wrap things up today, as always, email us your thoughts, ideas, or if you want to be on at aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Instagram is ABA Generalized the Pod. YouTube is ABA Generalized, which hopefully you're watching us. Guys, come watch us. We look beautiful.
I mean, not today for me. The rain did this to me.
And then we're on TikTok. Yep. Wow, that was bad.
I don't know if we're actually going to still be on TikTok with the whole ban.
I know, if it's going to be banned.
Whatever. That's a whole different story. For now, we're still on TikTok. And it's ABA Generalized. And then just remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.